So, Sacred Scotland 2023, A Journey of Independence. And why do I call it that? Well, I didn't know when we started that that would be one of the, if not the primary theme of this trip, but it became clear after a little bit of time, kind of towards the end. We realized that there were bookend events that led us to understanding Scotland as a country that has sought for a very long time and is still seeking its independence. But let's begin. First of all, this is the Scottish flag, as you probably know. And we started off in Edinburgh. So we started off in Edinburgh, flying into the airport. You know where you are because it's written in big letters. These are our 4 happy travelers, of which I am one. One of the things that you may notice is that this weather that you're seeing here is bright and sunny. And as opposed to what we were told to prepare for, which was 4 seasons in a given day, we experienced for 10 days straight, 65 to 80 degrees, very little wind, absolutely beautiful summer days, day after day after day. We did not have one drop of rain until we began to drive back to Edinburgh on our last afternoon. That was unheard of. And the Scots were scratching their heads about this weather. Anyway, we were very, very blessed to have it. I'm just going to have to do it like this. So here we are. Here we are with the map of Scotland. And I want to give you a sense of where we went. Oh my God. This is ridiculous. Okay. I want to give you a sense of where we went. Can you see my little cursor here floating around? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we started in Edinburgh and we drove up to near Stirling. We were in this area, which is the beginning of the Highlands. Then we went over to Oban, took a ferry to Mull, which is the island right here. Then we took another ferry to Iona, which you can't really see because it's very small, and that's right here. We stayed there a few days. We came back, went to Oban, came back to Glasgow and the Loch Lomond area, stopping along the way in this area here called Kilmartin. And then we drove up. You can see this little skinny pathway here in the middle. Those are lakes, lochs, one after the other, after the other, nestled between the Highlands. And you can see Loch Ness here, but there are other lochs along the way. That was one of the most glorious drives I've done in a long time. And we went up to Inverness, which is right here. And on our very last day, we went up in this direction onto what's called the Black Isle, even though it is not really an island. And then we came back down this way and to Edinburgh. So we really did a nice round journey. Now, I want to mention that there were 2 books that really guided me in this journey. And one of them is The Spine of Albion. The other is by Gary Bitcliffe and Caroline Hoare. They are geomancers in England, and they have written 3 or 4 books now. The other person is Freddie Silva, Scotland's Hidden Sacred Past. I recommend both of these books, but I will say that The Spine of Albion weighs about 10 pounds. So you might not want to travel with it, but it is full. It's on beautiful paper and it's full of incredible pictures and maps. And what they did, Gary and Caroline, was they started on the Isle of Wight and they traced the Ellen and Belinus line from the south of England all the way through going all the way up through Scotland. And you can see where there are little dots along the way. Those are the places where the two lines cross. So we would call them the female and masculine energy lines, or dragon lines, which is why you see the dragons pictured there. So where they cross is called a node. And we were fortunate to be able to visit a node or two along our journey. It's fascinating. Gary describes these energy lines, which are not lays, until there are a number of these points along the way that line up, usually 4 or more, either standing stones, sacred wells, churches, mounds, all kinds of cairns are connected energetically along what he suggests often are actual earth, faults, like an earthquake fault, but doesn't have to be an earthquake. There are faults that run along everywhere around the planet. And it seems that anomalies happen around these faults. And interestingly, the more anomalies happen on the minor faults than on the major faults. It's like the little offshoots of the major fault have more activity, more things going on. You'll find orbs coming out of them. You'll find all kinds of maybe distortions of time. All kinds of different things have been reported on these. What the ancient kings believed, and not just believed, but acted on, was that these energy lines were provided the capability to draw that energy into their castles. They would build their castles right on top of the lays to be able to more easily hold on to their kingdom, have the kingdom flourish, have them in particular flourish and remain as the sovereign of the land and that area. So they actively used these placements of their major houses on these lines. Kind of fascinating. Now, just to give you a flavor for Edinburgh, it does not snow or freeze in Scotland, even though it is so far north. The Gulf Stream keeps it warm, and the flowers everywhere we went, up north, south, east, and west, the flowers were absolutely gorgeous. So I just had to take a few pictures on my very first day just to give you a taste of what it was like. So as I said, our first stop was Rosslyn Chapel. Here it is. Now, Rosslyn Chapel, you're not allowed to take interior photos anymore. This chapel, I could speak a whole hour on Rosslyn Chapel. I'm not going to do that, but I will just point out that there are mysteries involved with the Templars and this chapel. It was built by the Sinclair family, which originally was Saint Clair from France, well-known Templars. And what you're seeing here is just what they call the choir, which was, when you're looking at a classic church, it's made in the shape of a cross. And if you're standing at the back of the church and looking all the way forward, you see the altar, and then you see usually 2 arms going off to the left and right. From those 2 arms forward to the altar is called the choir. So what we're looking at right here is the broken off end of one of the arms. They ran out of money. The man died, and then they didn't, the rest of the family did not want to continue it. So they basically, eventually there was a roof put on, and they kind of tore down what parts of the wall no longer really were going to serve, and they closed it in, but not before it had been in ruins for centuries. And it had ivy crawling inside. It was covered in green moss. It must have been amazing. One of the things, so I got these pictures online, And you see this little face here. This is called the Green Man. And there are many Green Man, which is a pagan artifact, many in the carvings around this interior of the chapel. You can see on the right here how incredibly detailed these carvings are. And the one in the lower right is called the Apprentice Pillar. And this was an interesting story where the master carver, the master architect, was away. So his apprentice carved this column. And it was so beautiful that when the architect came back, he was kind of jealous, filled with rage, actually, and he ended up murdering the apprentice. But the joke was on him, because on the diagonally high above opposite wall, there is an image of the apprentice, of the architect, who always has to face the apprentice's pillar. Now I'm going to skip ahead and just show you the images from walking around the glen around this chapel, which I found to be amazing. On the left-hand side, you see they just love their trees, and there's so many big, gorgeous trees. In this case, this is a beech tree leaning over. And what you see here is how they have built the wall around the exposed root system just to preserve it, I guess. Here we have roots growing down, down, down over walls. And this was a beautiful archway that just caught the autumn light there so beautifully. And we went down into this glen. I was drawn down the path on the right. There was a little stream. I was drawn to go down there, only to find that there was a tree that was branching out. It's the middle picture. I don't know if you can see it well. It almost opened like a seat. Not until you got literally almost toes in the water and turned around, which is where I took this picture, was there a poem, a little plaque on the tree, really a testament to a love between two people. Clearly seemed to be a man missing his beloved. And it was so charming and sweet. And you just know, this was a very special place. So it was fun to find that. Now, this was fun because as just the timing couldn't have been better. We get in our car to go back to Edinburgh to have lunch and go to the Edinburgh Castle. But there's now a barrier across the driveway into Rosslyn Castle. And that's because it's Fete Day, F-A-I-T-E, Festival Day, which is a festival for the children. And they seem to get dressed up in costumes. But first we have, oh, the sound isn't working. Oh, you can't hear the bagpipes.
We can hear it. We can hear it.
So that was our first taste of bagpipes, and we were so excited. And then the children followed in and were absolutely adorable in all their little costumes. All right, we went back into Edinburgh, and I'm just going to show you what the lay of the land is for Edinburgh. This is old Edinburgh, probably 1800s, but you can see this monumental mound that sticks up out of it, and that is where the castle is. Across in the center of the picture, across here, you can see a different peak and kind of a ridge line. I hope you can see that. This is called Arthur's Seat. And there's a whole story that goes with that, which I won't go into. But I just wanted to give you a sense. There's another bronze version of what I just showed you, and gives you a sense of the city. It's not a huge city. It's absolutely beautiful. And what we're looking at here is the museum that is in this sort of saddle that's between old Edinburgh which is where I'm looking now with the camera, and New Edinburgh, which is behind me, meaning Old Edinburgh is anything before 1800 and New Edinburgh is 1800 and after. So we're looking now at the oldest part, and up to the right is part of the castle. Now, we're sitting and having our lunch and watching as tons and tons of people parade by. And they are there as a, I'm going to play this for you. This is a walk for independence. And there were 25,000 people there that day, we found out. So on our very first day, we are met with this march, this peaceful march for independence, literally right in front of our faces. I thought, wow, what are the odds? You see how beautiful and sunny it is? Another strange thing. And so hold that in mind. We went up to the castle, which I'll show you in a minute. But before that, we stopped at the Writers' Museum, which is where many of Scotland's famous writers through the years have gone to write, to visit, to exchange ideas. And on the right-hand side, you see one of the most iconic public creations, and that is this monument to Sir Walter Scott. It's hard to tell, but he is seated in white marble right down in the center here. But this pokes up right in the middle of that of Newtown, and it's quite imposing. All right, so here we have just a few pictures of Edinburgh Castle. We had a lovely time there. We had a lovely guide, and we kind of zipped through it. I was most impressed with the view from there. The beautiful Pentland Hills, which is what you see on the right-hand side. Clearly, there's a lot of history in Edinburgh Castle. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but there's a lot. There are buildings you can go into that have apparently the oldest gems, royal gems in the UK. We did not go in there, but there's a war museum. There's all kinds of stuff. And it was a beautiful day, and we were very happy to experience it. This is Arthur's Seat, a little closer view of Arthur's Seat, which rises above the city. Okay, our second day took us out into the country, and here we were going to meet with our dear friend, Graham Gardner. Graham Gardner is also a geomancer of some repute. He lives in Glasgow, and I have met him through dowsing conferences in the past, and was very fortunate that he was free for 2 days of our tour, this being the first. So he came out to the Stirling area that I pointed out on the map to introduce us to the Fortingall Yew, which is what you're looking at right now. What you're looking at, it looks like two trunks, right? One on the left and one on the right. What happened was, this is a 5,000-year-old tree and thought to be the oldest living thing in Europe. It split at one point and divided, but kept living. So what you're looking at are the two pieces that thrived even after the split. This is on the ley line that Gary and Caroline dowsed for. And it was, to me, significant to begin our trip with touching base with the natural world in this way. We did a practice here, beautiful infinity wave practice, and it was very compelling. We were all, I think, impacted by it, by the incredible generosity of this being, what she holds and has held for so long and continues to thrive. She's walled off, so this is as close as we could get to her. After seeing the tree and spending some lovely time with her, we got in the car and we went to Craignadoon, otherwise known as where the stone circle is that Claire falls into in Outlander. The stones that they use in the show are not true to the place. They put those stones in, but interestingly, there are stones in a circle, farther, wider apart and much shorter, maybe haven't been excavated, I don't know, but they're definitely there. And there are also the Scotch pines. Scotch pines were a way that the pagans would mark sacred land. They carried the seeds with them and then would embed them in what they considered powerful land. So this was actually, even though it was kind of depicted in fiction, and maybe might not have been, because it's such a beautiful spot, might not have been energetically charged, it truly was energetically charged. This is the view from Craig na Dun. And if you want to go back to your Outlander series, if you have already watched them, you can see this in the background in the scenes where she's at the stones. Absolutely gorgeous. As I said, this is the beginning of the Highlands, so you get a sense here. Nearby is Mount Chehallion, which is considered the mountain of the fairies. I had thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to take a hike up there? But it's over 3,000 feet and climate is rather brisk, shall we say, at the top of it. And we had so many other things to do that we just sort of admired it, sent it love, sent it infinity waves, and went along our way. But it is considered the heart of Scotland. That is the pulse point of Scotland. Okay, after that, we went to Croft Moraig, which is this beautiful stone circle, really ancient. And we did a little, I was teaching everybody how to use their rods. And here is Teresa standing there with the rods going every which way. The energy was definitely flowing. And Dana was getting excited by something. We learned a lot this day. Graham taught us that, and here's a picture of Graham. Lovely, lovely man. Graham taught us about how the standing stones have 7 chakras, and you can douse them. If you go up the back of the stone, you can douse where the sacral is, where where each chakra is. And if you go to the 5th chakra and you sort of take your hands and lean against where the 5th chakra is, and you lean in with your feet together, it'll push you off to the left or right, depending on the cycle of the moon. Fascinating. I never knew that. We each tried it and each got pushed off. So, but I just want you to take in this incredible landscape. You can just drive up, get out of your car, and walk up to these ancient beings. Now, these stone beings did not wish to be touched. So we didn't do a lot of that. At least the big ones on the outside did not wish to be touched. And it's important for anybody who is doing things like this to make sure you ask before you touch. Same with trees, same with anything. It's just kind of polite, So we had a really fun time there. The next stop was this little, it's not really a circle, it's 4 stones, a quadrant. But what's incredible is that this tree is right next to one of the stones, growing seemingly right out of it. And here we were allowed to touch the stones, lean on the tree, feel the energy between them. It was a lovely spot. And that tree, we doused for some things that it needed. It really felt quite alone there and wanted some company. So we did what we could to satisfy that tree to feel not quite so alone. And on this day, as we were walking along, this is walking up to Craignadoon. I just want to point out that there's this interesting design in the sky, which looks a lot like an infinity sign. I don't know if you can see it. I've blown this up as much as I can. I hope you can see it. It's very interesting. Okay. Following this stop, we went to a place where the Alen line runs, and this is a ceiling of a little chapel really in the middle of nowhere. It is this painted ceiling, absolutely beautiful. And we were lucky that we had Graham with us, because I don't think I could have found it without him. So I know it's weird it looks like we're looking at a floor, but it's really a domed ceiling. And the drawings run all the way down the walls. There are some anomalies of these paintings. There are some Templar looking images, and so including a pregnant angel. So that was kind of fun. All right. And we ended our day in the Heritage Forest. The tree on the left here, Graham said, was the tallest tree in England. But I actually looked it up, and it is not the tallest tree in England, but it is close to being the tallest tree in England. It's very, very tall. We're looking at it from midway. So it starts much lower from where I'm taking the picture from. And then we just had this lovely walk through the forest and the trees, and came to a lovely waterfall and a kind of cave, human-made cave that we took some time to be in, surrounded by stone. It had a little window and it had this lovely door. It was a very magical place. We were happy to be there. All right, so after this, we headed over, as I said before, to Oban. So you drive onto the ferry. This is kind of looking like a big mouth that you drive onto, and it's a 45-minute ferry. And then you get over to the island of Mull. Then you drive across Mull, and that was one of the most interesting drives, because it's what they call single track, which means it's a single lane. And then there are these pull-off areas every 25, 30 feet. What's interesting about it is that people who are used to driving it quite quickly, and they don't pull over into their little pull-offs until the last minute, and they go at breakneck speed until then. So it often looks like you are going to be run down. Anyway, we had our little journey and we made it for the next ferry, but I wanted to show you this. I went in to use the restroom in the next ferry building, and this is the flushing button, and it says wave on. I couldn't believe it. They can't make this stuff up, because that's pretty much the modality we were in. All right, this is a picture on our way over to, I think it was to Iona. Yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful day, and the colors are incredible. We pull into Iona, sweet little Iona. Here is the island of Iona. It's not very big, and little downtown is teeny weeny over here. So you can see there's habitation just in this little area, and a few up here. It has its own golf course, apparently. What I want to show you here in this picture is this dun. Dun means hill. So this dun, right here, is where we went up and did some special stuff, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So we were staying right here next to the Abbey, and we could walk up to this area, and we could walk downtown, of course. Charming, flowers everywhere, absolutely adorable. I don't know how many people live on Iona, not very many. The schoolhouse is a single room schoolhouse. the post office is I don't, it's tiny. Everything's tiny and it's adorable. People could not. Now, let me talk about the people a little bit while we're just looking at flowers. The the Scots, according to Freddie, and he's done a lot of research, largely based on language, came out of Armenia basically, and traveled overland into the lower Norway, no, lower Sweden, and then sailed up to the northern part of Scotland, Orkney, Shetlands, that area, and from there moved downwards down the western coast. It's interesting they didn't choose to go into the eastern coast, but went all the way up to the top and started to work their way down. That's one of the reasons why you find the oldest artifacts in the UK on those islands to the north, the Orkney Islands and Shetlands. And so that's the derivation of where these islands got, who came to inhabit them. But of course, then we had years where there were a lot of Vikings coming in the 800s. We had the Picts. Before that, we had a lot of interaction between Ireland and Scotland. So, and we had the Romans, but the Romans, though they came to Scotland, they didn't stay that long. They didn't really like it because the Picts were a nasty, ferocious bunch. I don't want to say nasty. They were a ferocious bunch, covered in tattoos, often shirtless, terrifying in battle. They would come into battle screaming, yelling at the top of their lungs, a fearsome sight. They had very long spears, much longer than what the Romans had. So the Romans couldn't get close to them. And so the Romans built Hadrian's Wall and said, okay, you guys stay up here, we'll take the rest. So the influence of the Romans wasn't as great in Scotland, and of course they never got to Ireland. So the Celtic flavor, in my opinion, from my trips to both places, the Celtic flavor has really been preserved in both places. And I found that the people were just delightful, as they are in Ireland. They are so friendly, of course, but they're more than that. They're moving towards you. I've written about this in my newsletter. It's just a face forward, ask you questions, be genuinely interested in the answers. How can I help? I mean, just lovely, lovely people. On the whole, we only met maybe one or two sour pusses, and they were in the same hotel, which wasn't the greatest place. That was our only little, except for our other hotels, that was the only one that wasn't so great. But every other person, whether you're going in to buy a little, bottle of water or a gift or whatever, they will engage you. They will crack a joke. I heard laughter all the time, just at a distance, behind me, in front of me, beside of me. People are laughing. It's so delightful. And I just thought it was a gift, a total gift. So this is, by the way, this picture in the middle, these are artichokes that have gone to seed. I thought they were just beautiful. And I don't think they eat the artichokes. I think they just grow them as flowers. So here is the famous Iona Abbey. Well, there are a lot of stories about Iona. Iona is thought to be a Druid sanctuary long before it was a Christian one. This island has many currents running through it, especially from east to west. It is thought to be a power spot extraordinaire. I'll tell you one thing, when you're on Iona, you feel incredibly good. It just is, it's like you're bathing in
smiles and lightheartedness. And it's not just an artifact of being away or on vacation. It's not like that. It's a well-being that just is exuded everywhere you go. So it's thought the Druids were here, and then what happened was Columba came over from Ireland, and there are mixed stories about whether he was asked to leave Ireland or whether he voluntarily left Ireland. He didn't come straight to Iona. He went to Argyll, but then he came up to Iona and started this abbey. And it grew over time into the size of building that it is now. And he started converting the Druids to Christianity, those that did convert, not all did. And the ones that did not left Iona. When we mentioned this when I said to the guides, well, what about, the Druids and everything? Well, that's not been proven. So, anytime you go anywhere, you're going to have the standard protocol history lesson. And then, there are other stories, and the other stories are actually equally as valid. They're just sort of erased because they happened so long ago. So, when I went into the Abbey and I dowsed for any energy lines, I got absolutely nothing, zero, zilch. But people come here still to this day on St. Columba Day, and they do a pilgrimage. It's considered it was a pilgrimage years and years ago, centuries ago. It was a way to maybe not spend so long in purgatory. So if you made the pilgrimage and then you donated a coin or two or whatever you could afford, then you had ensured that you were going to get to heaven much faster than otherwise. And the church knew this and took full advantage of these annual events and filled their coffers. In fact, I was in the museum that's attached to this abbey, and it talked. I'm going to jump ahead here. St. Columba arrived in 563 with 12 monks, and fashioned after the Christ's 12 disciples. These monks started to mark graves with the sign of the cross. That was not done before then. And they started to carve them in ever more intricate designs, as you can see on the left. The cross above this, what's written, is a Templar cross, which I thought that was interesting that they actually displayed it. Templars, there's a mixed feeling about Templars, and that's a whole other presentation. But I recommend reading Freddie's book, The Templar Nation. It's largely about Portugal and how the Templars came to be headquartered there and how they thrived there. But when they were done in Portugal, when they had to leave, they were basically evicted. They went to Scotland. And that's part of what Rosslyn Chapel is all about. So they established their order in Scotland, and then they sailed to the New World. So there's a big, huge story about that. You can read it in Freddie's book. But in this particular museum, it talked about that the idea of purgatory actually didn't even enter into popularity until the 7th century. And once this idea became popular, that I'm using their word, popular, that's when the church started to be able to cash in on, oh, you don't want to spend time in purgatory. So on the inside of the church, you have ferns growing out of the wall, and that's because of the moisture content inside of the church, even though they've done everything they can to make it, water safe, waterproof. But it's pretty dank in there. On the outside is a well. I did not douse any energy by the well, but here on the ground, you can see this strange stone with a round circle, and what it is it's a hole, and you would the hole wasn't originally there. You would drop a coin or a marble type thing into it, and it would spin around and spin around until the hole was created. And it had to do with prayers, and you would do it over and over again until you finally wore through the stone, and then you had accomplished a great deal. And so over here, inside the abbey, is the very special marble that comes from Iona. And there's only one other place, and it's on one of the other Hebrides. So these are the Hebrides, these Western islands. One of the Hebrides to the north, I don't think it was Skye, I think it was Lewis, also has this white marble with the moss green embedded in it. It's absolutely beautiful, stunning. So there were the pillars made, and then this big slab that I'm showing you the image of. The other thing that's interesting is that the Book of Kells was actually started here on Iona. What we're looking at right now is a copy of the one that's in Ireland, but it is here where all of that started. This was around 800, and that's when the Book of Kells was made. Absolutely beautiful. Okay. Now, next to the abbey is a graveyard, and it is said that there are a great number of Scotland's kings buried here, including potentially Macbeth. You can see it's kind of in a state of disrepair. Nobody has touched it, so nobody has excavated to find out actually how many kings, but this was a center considered the spiritual center, just like Mount Schehallien was the heart of Scotland. Iona was the spiritual center, and so that's why the kings would go to be buried here. That was very important to them. And here is the burial chapel, which is, as you can see, the abbey is to the left, and the chapel is here on the center. This is called the Chapel of the Dead, and interestingly enough, there was an energy line there, and it ran right across the doorway from towards the abbey, but not in the abbey, and going the other direction. You could go in there, and we made some sound, and it was beautiful. The acoustics were incredible. So that little place is definitely potent. Okay, the nunnery is another building not far away. This is where the women were, and there's a lot to be said about the nunnery. I will say that here there were multiple energy lines doused. It felt wonderful to be there, whereas in the abbey, it didn't feel so good to me, but I don't know how the other gals feel. But we sat outside and listened to our guide talk about the different areas, space of this building that is a ruin now. But there were definitely female lines running through it. All right, remember I showed you the dune that was up on the top of Iona? Well, we climbed up it, and this is a 360-degree video of what it looked like on this gorgeous day. It's about 73 and slight breeze. Absolutely beautiful. And there's Dana. Islands floating, and okay, so that gives you a sense of the landscape. And from there, we were able to look down and see this, the Well of Eternal Youth, which from this angle looks a lot like a heart, doesn't it? So this is famous, and whoever is unmuted, please mute. This is a very famous place for energy workers, and we came up here and we did a beautiful infinity wave Trinity practice. It is bursting with positive energy. beautiful feminine feeling up here. And we asked if this well required anything of us, and we were told no. And it was just willing to participate in our practice, which we sent out to the world. So that was a beautiful, beautiful entree into Iona. Next day, here are the sheep crossing we saw a lot of sheep. And they were adorable everywhere we went. Sheep, 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 sheep. And so thought I'd share that with you. So the next day we went over to Thingles Cave. Now, it's called the island is called Staffa. Here's our boat on the left, and Staffa is known because of its basalt stone that runs all the way around it. And the cave itself is that big gaping hole there. Here's a picture a little bit closer in. We were unfortunately not able to get off the boat because even though it was a calm day, the swells were too large for us to get off the boat, which is too bad because you're supposed to be able to walk around to the cave and get in there and make some sound. There's a story about a giant who used to live here, and the giant was mad at the giant over in Ireland, where you see the giant steps, the Giant's Causeway, which looks just like this. It has these basalt linear rocks that are supposedly created from cooling lava. And so they got in a fight together, and one threw a rock and the other, whatever, not important. But there's a lot of history around this. But it was gorgeous just to go out on the water, and we saw many, many dolphin on our way, jumping and swirling around us. So basically, Iona is a special place. I highly recommend, even though it's not that easy to get to, I highly recommend a visit there. We had an incredible sunset on the these clouds were just remarkable. Sky was just beautiful. And so we decided to capture them. And okay, I'm going to scoot along here. I don't want to keep you all too long. So when we left, we took a detour that we weren't planning, but I had wanted to go to Kilmartin Glen, which is on the right-hand side here. I don't know if you can see, but there are multiple stones, multiple cairns. You could spend an entire week in Kilmartin Glen. We only went to one site, but I'm so glad that we did. And these are hard to read, but this is telling how far back these stones go. They're back into the 4000s BC, 5000 BC. These are ancient beings. We stopped first in the chapel in town, and because I wanted to see the carvings. These are the Pict carvings of gravestones, which are gorgeous and intricate, and everything has a meaning. Of course, we have the beautiful soldier here in the center. You can't find these anywhere else. I mean, they're rare. So to go into this little building with a whole bunch of them lined up like this was really a treat. And then we got down to Kilmartin. So it's the actual name of this configuration is Slachavulin. And it is what we're looking at here is half of it. There are two more stones further on the other side, making a kind of elongated X. So what are these circles? What are these stones about? Why do they even have them? Well, what I can tell you is that it's highly likely that they didn't have just one purpose. They were both ceremonial and astronomical. When you position yourself, you can see that the rocks are actually pointing to something on the horizon, maybe a dip in the hill, and uprising out of that dip 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, was a particular star system. And everything was oriented to the rising of that star system. And, you know, sometimes it's the same one over and over again. Sometimes it's to the sun, sometimes it's to the moon. They all have different purposes. And they were placed very specifically in these spots, again, to capture the telluric energy in the earth. So they act as kind of acupuncture needle into the earth, capturing that telluric energy and blasting it off, vibrating it off to the fields, to the animals, to the people around it. And back in the day, it was considered so important to be fertile because that was life. That meant more, you know, of course, it was more mouths to feed, but it was also potentially growing your clan. So you wanted to be fertile. It was important. Here we are standing next to one of those important stones. And I just want to tell you about a little experiment we did. Some of you may know, but when I teach a dowsing class, I like to, before I do anything, I like one volunteer to stand on one side of the room and everybody else on the other side of the room. And then I walk across the room and I ask to be shown that person's energy field. And usually it's somewhere between 3 and 6 feet away from their body. And then I ask the people on the other side of the room, even if they've never heard of the infinity wave, that's even better if they haven't, I ask them for 30 seconds to imagine that there is a figure 8 of flowing water going between their heart and the person's heart. So we do that for 30 seconds, and then I redouse the energy field. And quite reliably, the person's energy field has grown 3 times, just from 30 seconds of doing something they don't even know what they're doing, but we know it's the infinity wave. And that's really cool. And that's, you know, kind of impressive. Well, I thought this field would be a perfect place to show the gals that experiment. So I can't remember who volunteered first, but we went, you know, she went out and we walked a little ways away, doused her energy thing. We did that. And sure enough, she came away with her field 3 times larger. But then it didn't seem fair to only have one person get that. So I said, okay, let's do another person and make sure everybody, you know, gets their wave blast. But to my surprise, when I doused the energy field of the second person, it was already 3 times bigger. It was the size of the first person after we doused. So I thought, or after we waved. I thought, oh, that's well, okay, because you were just waving, so your energy field is bigger. Okay, that makes sense. We did the third person, it tripled again. And finally, it was my turn, and we were just not even, we were almost out of the field. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And everybody did the dowsing to see where the person's field was. So it wasn't just me. So that's kind of cool. We had fun doing that. Okay, next day we are back with Graham in Glasgow. And this here is a modern stone circle that's been put next to some housing in Glasgow. I forget how old it is. I think it's within the last 10 to 15 years. But the stones were kind of perky, you know, they were like, okay, we're here, and the energy was being created. You can attract telluric energy to geometries such as stone circles. Freddie has another wonderful book, a little book about how to create sacred space, and you can draw water to your sacred space, and you can draw energy lines, telluric energy to your sacred space, and he teaches you how to do it. So we had a good time with these guys, and there's Lizzie at the center, and it was very interesting to be in a new circle. You know, we're so used to the old ones. So there is, I'm showing you here a street lamp with the symbol of Glasgow. And it's a fish, a tree, a bell, and what was the other one? Fish, a tree, a bell, and a crown? Anyway, but I love how it says under here, freeborn and of antiquity. There's another moment of really taking in this independence idea. So we had a wonderful time going through Glasgow. This is the main event here, Glasgow Cathedral. We went in, it's getting work done on its steeple, but we went inside and we doused inside, and we doused the energy lines, which Graham already knew where they were. As you know, and this is a perfect example, there is a nearby well, and it's thought that this cathedral was plopped right on top of what had been sacred pagan land. So the lines are still operable inside it, and it was really fun to trace them down. It brought us down below into the basement, and look here, look at these. These are two green men. And again, what are they doing in the basement of the cathedral? Originally Catholic cathedral. It had very beautiful stained glass and a carved wooden ceiling. Big organ on both sides, very, very lovely. Then after lunch, in which we went, it was in a house that had been thought to be a witch's house, haunted maybe. We went to something called the Govan Stones. So Govan is a little offshoot of Glasgow, and these are remarkable. These are Viking burial stones. What's interesting about them, aside from their carvings, is that he's showing you what a Viking boat looks like upside down. So they're thinking the Vikings came on boats when their men died. They carved the boat and turned it upside down. And then there's a dragon on the top. This is a dragon head here. It's and you can see these look like scales, the individual little carved stones there. These were amazing, and this fellow who's showing us the picture was one of the curators of the whole inside of this church is surrounded by those carved stone gravestones, and there one is more beautiful than the next. So here is an example of this is really the most beautiful example. This is a crypt, like a coffin, and you can see the 4 deer here, but look at this interweaving, the knots. I mean, this is incredible. Everything is so beautifully done, just beautifully done. And there's symbolism to, these are horses here on the right. There's symbolism to all of that. And I have to say, I have forgotten what it was. If anybody remembers, come on now and tell me. Our last stop of the day was at this castle, which is haunted. And we did a practice underneath the beech trees nearby. But on this 3rd level here, we had to come up a narrow stairwell and move through this room. And I didn't I wasn't really thinking, but it definitely impressed me as that I wasn't alone, that it suddenly got much cooler. And I think I felt a presence up in this neighborhood. So we did an infinity practice underneath the trees. I wanted to point out this is the Lady Well that is very close to the cathedral and the necropolis where everybody's buried. It's just stuck off to the side and, you know, had energy running through it. Wells usually have the female energy line running through them. Our final stop, we climbed up this small hill, this dune, and we got to the top in order to look across Loch Lomond and see the Lady of the Lake. Do you see her lying here? Her head's on the right. Here's her chest. Here are her feet. Here's her arm. Now, in the Arthur Tales, there is, of course, the Lady of the Lake, which we think of as holding up Excalibur. But this is actually what is considered likely to be the real Lady of the Lake, is this island where there was a sisterhood. I can't really call it a nunnery, a convent, but it was a religious order of some sort, living there for many, many years. So this is where many people think that the Arthur Tales happened. There's a lot of stories of Arthur having fought on fields not far from here and actually all across Scotland. But this is where they think it mainly happened. So that was pretty magical and beautiful. All right, now we're going to get in our car and we're going to drive into the Highlands. And by the way, I have to thank everybody who was not driving for taking some of these pictures, which I could not take because I was driving. So not all of these pictures are mine. I just want that to be clear. But we had the most beautiful drive going up and finally got ourselves up to Loch Ness, which was about as stunning as you can imagine. The landscape, the lake. Look at this. It's just, I don't know. And we were pretty excited. So, you know, we were taking pictures of ourselves. And then there's a mega yacht right in the middle of everything. You can see that there's not a lot of development. They're just little villages still. I mean, it kind of feels like you're back in time in Scotland. Everything's on a small scale and it's delightfully small. We pulled into Inverness, and here, I don't know if you can see, but on the bottom right, we are right downtown Inverness, and here is a man fly fishing for salmon in the river. I just thought that is so fantastic. Up to the left here is what they call the castle. I don't know how old it is. They're refurbishing it now. I think they're going to turn it into a hotel and living quarters. But there's some beautiful architecture in Inverness. Here are the gals in front of the Good Crake Cafe. And for those of you who were in Ireland, you remember that crake can be good or it can be bad. It is a lightning bolt from the sky to make your life wonderful, and equally could make your life horrible. So you want to be on the good side of crake. So going to the Good Crake Cafe is the way to go. And then we just liked this little place called the Wee Bar. It's just so darn charming. Walking through Inverness, I saw these, they had walking streets, and these were kind of benches that were slanted, interestingly enough, with these words. So you have the Gaelic on the right and the English, or depending. So it's insight is ret, laker is perseverance, Lindy is open-heartedness. I just thought, you know, these positive messages are kind of around you all the time. And to the right, we see the unicorn on the top of the pillar, because the unicorn is Scotland's animal. The unicorn is thought to be a symbol of purity and a symbol of truth. The horn being cutting through to the truth, and also, you know, quite capable of battling if need be. Okay, so we knew we wanted to go to Clavicairns, and we switched the days around a little bit because I was starting to wonder if we would have good weather every day. So we went over to Clavicairns. These are absolutely incredible. There are 3 of them in the complex, and they're within close walking distance to one another. This is the first one, and you can only see here 3 standing stones, but the whole thing is ringed with standing stones. And then when you go around to the front of it, you can see that you can walk inside. What were these used for? Well, people would say, oh, well, they're missing the roof. They were a burial chamber. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think these are, as I said before, they're energy enhancers. Somebody has written about the many mounds that are found throughout the UK, and that these mounds are placed specifically on places like the standing stones that are acupuncture needles. They are placed on these specific places to gather the earth's energy and to amass it until, usually with some kind of human assistance, it can be released. So that's, and the other piece of this, and Freddie is big talking about initiation chambers. Now, I don't know if this one is, because usually with an initiation chamber, there are 2 entrances. There's one facing the morning sun, and there's one facing the setting sun. So you would typically, if you had done everything you know to earn the right for the initiation, you would enter at night or as the sun is setting, and you would go inside, be surrounded by stone in the black, and then you would emerge in the morning, maybe the one day, maybe 3 days, and you would emerge out facing the morning sun. And this symbolized a death, the death of the ego, the death of facing fear, all of the things that are needed to become a mature, powerful person. And these rituals have happened all over the world. There are initiation chambers all over the world of different design, but the intention seems to be similar. So here we have everybody posing inside the cairn. We talked to these stones. These stones were very receptive and didn't mind being touched. The one on the left is quite large, quite tall, and they were very interactive. So we went around and sort of had an interchange with each one of them. And this is walking away from that cairn, and you can see the next one in the field between the trees and in front there, also with stones fully around it. I was surprised at how many stones there were still left, because it's not uncommon to have had stones taken as building material for other villages, you know, structures in the village. But these were really intact. It's really nice to see. So I'm going to skip now to the 3rd cairn and show you that two of the standing stones are outside the fence line and next to the road. When you stand inside the cairn on the right-hand side, I don't know if you can see it, but there are what we call cups and rings. So you might be able to see that there are indentations, and they're perfectly circular into the stone. These are showing alignments of the sun and the moon. Now look in the distance. You see that tall stone? So there's an alignment here between the circles, these cups or rings, and this tall stone, and then beyond that. Now, a lot of times trees have grown up, so we can't see necessarily what the landscape would have looked like without them thousands of years ago. But the consensus is that these ring marks are maybe they're a star system, maybe they're delineating a star system, but there's definitely an astronomy aspect to them, which is really cool. We loved these cairns. We ended up having lovely weather and a really beautiful time just hanging out with them, hanging out with rocks. What could be better? Anyway, okay, now another thing that was not on my radar to do was to go to Culloden. Okay, this came up as a result of reading while I was in Inverness. I was reading parts of Gary's book, and he talked about Culloden and the history of what happened here, and also the fact that the Elen line runs through it because there's a well in the middle of it. And we were trying to go all these places where either the Belenus or the Elen line or both were. This, when I came to understand, I had heard the history vaguely before, but I got it in a whole different way. Having fallen in love with Scotland, fallen in love with its people. When I read the story of Culloden, I was so moved, and I said, you know what, we have to go here. And this is what I mean by a journey of independence, because for those of you who don't know, the story of Culloden is about the Jacobite revolt that happened in 1746. So there had been previous revolts to try to reclaim Scotland as an independent state, and the English had always vanquished these revolts. This one involved a character named Prince Charles, who was the son of the rightful king. The rightful king and his family had been banished to Italy, and there were people in Europe, in France, and in the UK who supported Prince Charles's campaign to reinstate his father. They needed money, they needed men, they needed supplies, they needed guns, they needed all kinds of things. And so there was quite a lot of planning to try and stage this revolt. Unfortunately, a lot of mistakes were made along the way. That the Scots won the day in a couple of the battles, but by the time that they were gathered in Inverness, the company of Scots were greatly depleted. It had been too long. They were exhausted. They'd had to wait out the winter and run short of supplies. They were not in good fighting shape. And just strange decisions were made about how to stage this. They were hoping would be their last battle, their battle that would once and for all reclaim Scotland as a sovereign state. Prince Charles had a general, and then he had this other man, this Irishman, who kept intervening with his own opinions. And this man was a friend of Prince Charles. And so even though the general had served Charles very well and they had had some wins, for some reason on this day, Charles decided to listen to his Irish friend, and to the disaster of the Jacobites. So what happened was that the positioning, what we're looking at now is a field that is to the right, a very boggy field. Boggy meaning thick with vegetation and muddy, like sink down to your knees muddy. Horses would not be able to get through it. People, you'd be, you'd have to, well, a Scot would know how to get through a bog, but it's not good solid land to fight on. And this is where they were positioned, and where they fought was on this bog. And they were positioned just underneath a hill. So they were on the low land, which meant that the English had the high ground and had the advantage. The English also had muskets, which not that many, the Jacobites did too, but not to the degree and not to the modernity of the Brits. So what happened was a series of disaster calls, and they were defeated in an hour. It was a complete massacre, and it sealed the fate of the Highland way of being. The English would chase down anybody who ran away. By the way, the French troops wouldn't fight. They bolted as soon as things started. So the backup armies that they thought they had, they didn't have. They were abandoned. And the English would then, track people down, their women, their children, kill them. It was absolutely awful. And the new laws that were instated were that there was no playing of the pipes and no wearing of the tartans, because the tartan is how you could tell clan from clan. And even though the clans fought amongst themselves, they were united for the most part in this desire to be Scotland again by itself. They had run themselves very well, and they wanted to have that control back. So to take away the pipes and the tartan was just crushing the soul, really, of the Highlander. And not only that, but they moved people off the farms. The English pushed them into cities or villages, towns, and took over their land and grazed their sheep. So they couldn't raise crops. They just really robbed them. So understanding this story, and I'm telling the story now, and of course, I gotta tell you, walking around this place, every other person is talking about Outlander. There are lots and lots of tourists that have come to Scotland because of Outlander, and rightly so, because in the first season or two, it is really all about Culloden and building up to Culloden, the disaster that Culloden was. So what we're looking at here, you can see maybe some flags in the distance. The red flags signify where the Brits were standing, and it's hard to see, you can't really tell, but across the bog a little bit, there are blue flags for where the Scots were. I went up to the highest place I could, and I just took this video to show you a little bit of the landscape. I can really see why. Here's the field. Kind of windy. It's so beautiful. It's such a fertile land. I can understand why so many people invaded it. So many people tried to rule it. So many people tried to steal it. It's a gorgeous, magical place, and it supports life. Let's put it that way. So why wouldn't you want it? So what we did was, um, uh, we walked, we really used our guidance to walk around the pathways that lead all the way out to where all the clans were. So there are different rocks signifying where each clan was. This is where the MacDonald clan was, and each stopping place would sort of feel into whether this was a place, because we were feeling very called. I felt very called to do releasing of souls here. It was inviting us to participate in that. And so we went around at different spots where we felt like that was a place to do it, and we dowsed about it. And then we would do a practice quietly, just helping any souls that have just been, hanging out in this bog for these many centuries, to help them depart. Well, interestingly, I just, on a spur, I took this picture. Now, it's going to be hard to see, but there in the center of the picture, and it might be a light effect from the sun, but there is a ray that is red and blue. And I've blown it up here. You can kind of see it. It's blue on the top and red on the bottom. As I said, it might be a light artifact, but the fact that it was red and blue streaming up like that really, really caught my attention. And we really gave it our all, and we were very, very moved. And when we went to the well, we made prayers to send down the line, down the Alen line, all the way through England and going north, prayers for independence, if that is in the highest good of the Scots. So this is why I say our trip was kind of bookended by this theme of independence. It's a very powerful thing when you're there. And then our last day, we went to the Fairy Glen in Black Isle, which was filled with fairies and beautiful fairy energy. We did a practice right here with all these beautiful roots of the trees. We stood next to the stream and next to these trees and did a beautiful practice. Here is the waterfall in the background. That's our final parting shot for the gals. And then we stopped at this place called Clootie Well. Clooties are all those pieces of fabric everywhere. And honestly, it felt so choked and terrible. And when I doused if the well had any energy, it did not. And the trees were basically saying, get this stuff off of us. We cannot stand it. Fortunately, we found out that every so often people do come in and remove it. And then, of course, everybody does it again. It's supposed to be an offering. It's supposed to be an acknowledgement of sacred space, but it's gotten out of hand, like so many things. And some of the things that are strung up here are not things that are very honoring, like underwear. So that was our final stop. And the gals, we had a lovely dinner in our beautiful hotel, and off they went the next morning. And then I went off for 3 days of just chilling out, and then Jim came in. And so the next part of this, I'm going to just zip zap through, is what we did. This is also in Edinburgh. This is Holyrood Palace. This is an active house today. This is where King Charles stays when he comes to Edinburgh. And it's quite beautiful. And what I liked about is here you see Arthur's Seat as their backyard, basically hanging out in their backyard. What I liked about Holyrood Palace was that it had one gigantic room filled with every portrait of every Scottish king. And King Charles has to walk by that all the time. I don't know, just, you can tell whose side I'm on. All right, then Jim and I went off to a place where there is a node, where the Belinus and Hélène Lines cross, and that is Dunfermline Abbey in Dunfermline, which is a sweet little town. And the abbey itself is beautiful. We walked around it. These are different shots of it. There's an intact place that you're looking at right now, and then there are rectories and ruins off to the side. This is what it looks like inside. It's not fancy, you know, but it's pretty impressive. I also when we were walking through the town, you see this beautiful clock tower, just stunning. And a wedding party was coming out. And later on, we caught them here in the castle ruins, taking their wedding shots. It was just so delightful. Oh, darn, I forgot to put the picture in, Jim. But there's a picture of where the lines cross right outside the abbey. And it is on St. Margaret's. It's not where her bones are buried, because those have gone missing, but it's where they may have been buried at one time. And Queen Margaret was responsible for, she was beloved. She is now Saint Margaret. She was beloved because she really cared for people, and she helped, you know, she was queen with her husband Malcolm, and they moved the spiritual center of Iona to Dunfermline. So for a time, it was here in this beautiful town that which was where the Stone of Destiny was nearby. The Stone of Destiny is the stone upon which kings were made. You sat on the stone, and that's where you were crowned. To this day, that stone is used in the crowning ceremony, and it was used when King Charles was coronated. There's a special chair that houses the stone, and they sit upon it. And there's a lot of stories about the Stone of Destiny, such as the English apparently thought they had captured it and brought it back down to London, where it stayed for a very long time until England returned it. But there's an alternative story that they actually were they thought they took the Stone of Destiny. In fact, they took a different stone. And so all this time they've been crowning kings and queens on the wrong stone, which would mean all their lineages were illegitimate as monarchs. All their monarchs were illegitimate. It's kind of funny to think about. The Stone of Destiny, legend has it came out of Egypt by Princess Scotta. Yes, she brought the stone to Scotland, and maybe she named it as well. This is a particular kind of stone that is not found in Scotland. So it's a lot of mystery, a lot of stories. It's fun to read about. Both Freddie and Gary talk about it, and it's kind of fun. So we had a lovely day in Dunfermline. There's a beautiful park in the town, just with a beautiful stream running through it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And there's a secondary nodal point where Malcolm's Tower is. It's just above this little bridge here. And so we managed to visit that. All right, off we go to Orkney. And Orkney, I had been wanting to go to for a very, very long time, and you'll see why in a minute. Just want to give you a sense of what it looks like. It's absolutely lush and green and full of sheep and full of growing things. The island of Orkney is actually the mainland, considered the mainland of all the littler islands all around it. So they call it the mainland. It's so funny, but it's not a huge island. We went from one end to the other. I think we did it I think if we had just done that, it'd probably be an hour and a half, maybe, to go from one end to the other. In the town, there is this beautiful church made out of the red sandstone that is native to Orkney. Orkney Islands were a fascinating story, but I'll get into it. So this was my big draw to come here, the Ring of Brodgar, and it is absolutely incredible. It is the third largest stone circle in Europe. It is, you can't get any closer than this anymore, unfortunately, so you can't get close to the stones, but they are absolutely stunning. And look at the environment around them. There's a big moat that's around them, and you can see that there's still some heather blooming on the hillside. But this isn't just existing in and of itself. It's part of a bigger complex, as most of them were. So here is the Ring of Brodgar. I'm putting my cursor around it. Next to it, there's what they call a knowe, which we would call a mound. And down here is the Ness of Brodgar. And down here, which is another, they're uncovering that now. It's a 6,000-year-old village. Here are the stones of Stennis and the Barnhouse stone. Do you see how the alignment is here? So that's no accident. Also, I'm going to take you back and show you, if you can see, that these stones have angles cut into them. Not every one, but many of them. What are those angles about? Freddie would say these are astronomical. They're pointing to astronomical artifacts in the sky, and that those are not natural. The angles are a particular angle that's repeated many times in many of the stones. So, and there's something about that angle, which I'm sorry to say, I don't remember right now, but this was, I mean, I was such a happy camper. Jim can tell you, I was dancing a jig to be here. It is still very powerful. It has an energy line running directly through it. I believe it's the Belinus line. And by the way, we learned how to dowse for what colors the ley lines were. They are, think of them like bands of color, like a rainbow in a sense, but they're not necessarily all the rainbow colors. It might be in the case of Belinus and Elen, it's often purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow. And you can ask how many bands there are. And this is a helpful thing for when you're dowsing for either energy. Well, if you're dowsing for energy and you find more than one line, you can identify whether it's the same line that you just found 5 minutes ago or whether it's a different line. Anyway, this was very, very exciting. And here's another little picture of it. Oh, I was fortunate I got to go twice. Down the road a piece are the stones of Stennis. And there you go. You see those angles again. Now, this originally had more stones to it. The farmer who owned the land, in fact, it looked like this. And the farmer who owned the land, you see how big it is? Those stones are huge. Got sick and tired. Well, the one story is he got sick and tired of mowing around it. And the other story is he got sick and tired of people coming on to the property and doing things like this picture is showing, pagan rituals. He didn't believe in all of that. He thought it was sacrilegious. So he blasted the stones, many of the stones, down. The villagers were so angry at him, they tried to burn his house down twice. He is no longer there, but it is sad. It is very, very sad because look how incredible this is. Now, interestingly, I did not get any energy in these stones and in this circle, but there you see the size of the thing, gigantic. On the left here was thought to be the marriage stone. It used to have a cover on it. Well, actually, the cover is on the ground now. It used to sit on top of those two stones and probably a third stone. much like a cairn. But that would be where you would go to be betrothed, or that would be where you would go as a maid wishing to be betrothed, or you might go there and get engaged. So our friend Graham thinks that the Stones of Stennis was a marriage ceremonial site, which it could have been, who knows? Then we went out to the cliffs, and you can see rain coming. So it was raining when we started, but within a few moments, and this is the other thing, you look on the weather app and it says rain all day. No, it rains for 15, 20 minutes, and then it does this. And there's a path that runs all the way along the coastline. It was so gorgeous. I'm just going to play. Absolutely stunning. And we were walking down this path, hoping to see what's called the Old Man, which is a tall stone structure off the coast of the island just south of us. So I don't know if you can see, there's an island in the distance, and there's this stone artifact called the Old Man. Well, as we continued to walk, guess what we found? We found this beautiful fella standing here in the turquoise ocean, and come to the other side and look what we found. There's another one. Gorgeous fellow. And along the way there, we found another well, just hanging out in between two of the little cliffs, and it was very powerful. We had a delightful walk here, and it just felt at the edge of the world. We're facing east, so we're facing the Americas and Canada from this point. Then we found this lovely cairn, and we went inside, and this is a really cool place. I did not make sound in here, but I should have. There are 3 different chambers in here. One can only guess what it was used for, but probably ceremony. And there is Jim lying in the grass in his happy place. Next day, we went to Scarborough, and this is an excavated village from 6,000 years ago. And this was what it might have looked like, really, with this beautiful freshwater lake just nearby. But this would have been a Viking encampment. And it was here for probably operational for 600 years. So here's the Viking ship that would have come over and settled here. And here is what it looks like today. What you're seeing to the left is no longer a freshwater lake, but it is the ocean which broke through the land eventually. When that happened, this village, everybody left. They needed the fresh water, so they departed. But these excavations, look how there are beds, there are shelves. Let's see if I can find the bed one. Yeah, these are beds here. So they would have filled them with, leaves and sheep skin and that sort of thing. They have a bureau with shelving to show their nice wares, their pottery, which they found a lot of in here. And it's just amazing. And they all connect to one another. It's like a little hive. You have your own little house, but you have doorways into your neighbor's house. It was a beautiful sight. And the other thing, this was amazing. Now, so all these little islands that make up the Orkneys create something called Scapa Flow. Scapa Flow is the water that's in between all of them. And in World War II, that is where the British fleet was anchored. Churchill had, there's some prisoners of war from Italy that had been captured down in Africa, and they were shipped up here to Orkney, and they were put to work to create these barriers for some of the passageways that would lead into Scapa Flow, that body of water, to prevent submarines and boats, alien boats, and so on and so forth. So they filled it in with rock, and they created roads connecting these little islands so that you could drive around Orkney. And, anyway, these Italian soldiers were, they couldn't really, they didn't want to live in a barren place. So they would make these walkways, they would plant flowers, they were beautifying the place. And then they really wanted a place to worship. So they got this little building, which did not look like this, and they started to decorate it. And they decorated it on the outside and on the inside. And what I'm showing you looks like tile and carving of plaster and all of that. No, this is plasterboard and fiberboard that they have done trompe l'oeil painting on. It's a very tiny little space, but it is so beautiful. And they made everything out of scraps. The stained glass windows, the candlesticks that you see there are made out of cans of beef, empty cans of beef. The ironwork that you see on the right came off of damaged ships. But look how they created this incredible artwork. So they would have a place to worship. And here on the lower part, what looks like beautiful wood is not. That is all just flat fiberboard. Unbelievable. It was really something. So we left the Orkneys after 4 days, very sad to go. It was an incredible experience, and I'm so very glad that I got to go. We went lastly to a town called Crail, which is north of Edinburgh on the east coast. And it's quite 15-20 minutes from the famous St. Andrews golfing place. This is a view out of our window across the North Sea. We went to St. Andrews one day to visit the remains of the abbey there. And I will say, only in St. Andrews will you find multiple grave markers and stones to golfers with golf clubs and balls, and all carved into the stone, mentioning their prowess at the game. It's really quite unusual. But I want to bring us back to Crail, because Crail is a tiny little village. And what I'm showing you now is the outside of the wall where the castle once stood. And our where we stayed was a house that had been built after the castle was turned down, probably sometime in the 1800s. They built a little manor house, and we rented an apartment in that manor house. So we were that shot of the morning sun was out over this wall. And this is the view out of the kitchen. It just gives you a sense of the place. Gorgeous little tiled roofs, and I loved it so much. And there's this little, you go through a hole in the wall, and there's this little tea shop that you can sit outside by the sea and have your tea and your pickled herring and your scones, and they give you a blanket if you're chilly. There is a 171-mile walkway that goes all the way along the sea, called the Coastal Path, and I walked it every single day. I'm just showing you here some of the sites along that, with the beautiful fuchsia hedges. They're 5, 6, 7 feet tall, these fuchsia hedges in Scotland. It's just hard to imagine, but there you go. So this is along the Coastal Path one morning, and to my surprise, I don't know if you can see, but there is a woman coming out of the water. I ran into her twice. She was bathing every morning in the North Sea, God bless her. And she wasn't in there for a short amount of time. She was in there swimming laps back and forth. I was thinking, oh my God, I don't even want to put my toe in there. But that was her regular habit. Walking along the path, I came to this stone at the end. Now, the Crail people call it something, I forget, like the old man or something like that. But to me, it looks like the side view of a doggy with the nose sticking out to the left and the ears coming down. But it could very well also be seen as a man with a pointy beard. But anyway, I went out and sat on this rock and had a delightful time. And as you can see, it's a calm day. But that was the only calm day when we were in Crail. The winds were blowing between 40 and 60 as miles an hour, as Jim can attest, who was trying to play golf in them every day. They have a joke in Crail, which actually isn't that funny. And that is that, or in St. Andrews, that you can hit the golf ball and have it land behind you. That's how strong the winds are. And that's what makes golf in Scotland so difficult. Now, I don't dare play the video of this because it'll lock down again. But I'm going to take you now into the final sacred space that we experienced in Scotland. And it's called Donino Den. This is an ancient Druid site, and it is beyond wonderful. You walk down through the woods, and then you come across this. You come upon this flat space with a well. The well apparently never changes its height. Of the water stays constant. And there were little teeny weeny bubbles coming up. So it's self-regulating. I don't know how it works. If you, I'm going to take a closer shot here and show you off to the left here, carved into the stone is a footprint. Much like the Stone of Destiny, there are footprints carved into stones like this all over the place. Well, not all over the place, but in significant places, because one would put one's foot into that when they were claiming leadership or kingship. And so when you see a sacred well like this is how we know it's sacred. Aside from the fact that we douse that it's had an energy line running right through it. This is a strong indication that you're in a sacred spot, has been recognized as a sacred spot. The Druids apparently have used this place for a long time. We were arriving just after the fall equinox, so there were offerings of flowers and fruit and things along the way. So when you look to the left of the well, you'll see that there are stairs carved in very steeply, going down, 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 and then through a narrow opening in the rocks. I hope you can all see that. So you are beckoned to go down into this lower level. And as you come through, there is this symbol carved into the rock, almost like a welcome signal. I was inspired to put my hand on it, you know, as a way of marking my presence and feeling the energy. I don't know, it just felt like a ritualistic thing to do. And there's a stream here running down in the center of it. It's hard to describe the peace, the feeling of stillness, the space being held in this place. It was unbelievable. Here is a big jutting out rock that to me really looks like a serpent looking over the whole area, where I'll show you in a minute, where there's an altar. So that looks like a serpent to me. And here is a shot from the other side of the stream that wraps all the way around this space. Here is the altar. Let's see here. That's not supposed to be there. Oh, those are videos. I'm not going to play those. Hold on. These just, yeah, hold one sec. Let me get to the next thing. Okay, here's the altar from two sides. This is from the back side looking toward the stairwell over here. And this is with my back to the stairwell looking at, they had had a fire and they had, now these are offerings that are appropriate. They're going to either be eaten by animals or dissolve into the earth. And that's fine. This place was magical, absolutely magical. And there people put coins and things you can't really see, but into these crevasses there are coins shoved. There's a Trinity symbol carved into the stone. But here's the pièce de résistance, is the man carved into the stone. And it's just, it's just so darn cool. So I was fortunate to go once with my friend Lisa and a second time with Jim and Lisa's husband and really experience this place. So Jim, you're welcome to chime in here. We are at the end of the show.